Good evening, everyone. How are we? Hope we're all well. On, Saturday night, the 7th of December. Hey, Tofty, Brad, welcome. Hope you're well. What happened on the 7th of December, lads? 1941.
Oh, Pearl Harbor.
Yes, I only just clicked when I said the 7th of December, Pearl Harbor. So I'll be tomorrow for the Yanks. It'll be the 7th over there. Yeah. Pearl Harbor, 7th of December, when the Yanks ended the war.
Yeah, I've actually been to that site. I think Brad has as well. She's pretty amazing, isn't it, when you go there and see that, what happened there, obviously?
Yeah, Ros went there. She said the USS Arizona Memorial's pretty touching there. But anyway, welcome, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying your weekend so far. We're Saturday night. Thanks for joining us, Tofty and Brad. For those who been following the channel for a while, I'm sure you know Brad and Tofty. But for those who are new, Phil the Maniac's on. G'day, Phil. Yeah, I'll get you to do an intro soon, fellas, just so people know your background and all that type of stuff. So when you start talking, they know you're not full of you-know-what and that you actually know what you're talking about. So just to give people a bit of a background and what have you. So I'll do a few share. All the normal suspects are on. We've got 71 already. We only just started, fellas. We've got 71 already, which is really good. Hey, tonight we're going to – Bradley's just clearing his throat there. Tonight we're going to be –
got a cold.
The main thing we're going to be talking about, guys, is tapping into the knowledge of the two blokes on screen. A lot of us on here, we love going away. We love going on trips. And tonight's all about what we can do to get our vehicles ready for the long trip and also our caravans. Because let's face it, when I did that big trip down south last year, it's always in the back of your mind. Tofty, you're in Victoria at the moment, mate. It's always mechanical problems and all that can really spoil a good holiday, mate. So we got to try and do what we can do to try and give ourselves the best opportunity to get to our destination and home without anything going wrong. Now, being mechanical items, things can go wrong, mate. Things can go wrong, but tonight's all about what we can do to try and, as I said, give ourselves the best possible opportunity to get down there and back, because nothing worse than having mechanical problems when you're out remote and it turns out to be something that could have been avoidable. It's something, if we did our checks and that before we left, i.e. an old fan belt, the fan belt lets go because you haven't replaced it. It's all cracked and it's old and brittle and your fan belt lets go. That's a game changer until you can get a new one on. So you're not going to go anywhere. And I know in the BT50, Brad, you've owned one. You can't just change your own fan belt in those, mate. You've got to have a special tool to actually change a fan belt in a BT50.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you've got to really realistically have a plan and a diagram as to where they go as well, because you've got what they call a serpentine belt. So serpentine meaning snake, obviously. So it just snakes its way around all the pulleys. What are you laughing at?
Someone's just had a little thing here, Dave Hunter. You serviced his car, mate, for many years, and he had a lot of breakdowns. Good on you. Well done, Brad.
Kylie Jamison. Before we came live, everyone's going, Tofty. Brad said, Tofty, you've been out in the sun. You look sunburned. Kylie's up him already.
Tofty, welcome back,
Red Tomato, man. He's on. Everyone's up him already. We've only just started. Tofty's going to log out in a minute and say, bugger the lot of yous. Hey, fellas, before we get going, we'll get you to introduce yourself. Just tell us a bit of your background, just in 20 words or less. And then we'll get in and we'll talk a bit about what trips you're currently on, or what you've been on recently, or what trips you've got coming up. And then we'll get into the guts of the live feed tonight and talk about preventative maintenance and all that type of stuff and what we can do. Righto, Tofty, I'll start off with you, mate. I know Brad's been on my channel quite a bit now and whatever, but you haven't been on for a little while, mate. And people are a bit out of touch with what you've been doing and what you're up to. It's been except for the little cameo appearance the other day on the 12-hour live feed, you haven't been on for quite a while, mate. So what have you been up to? Tell us a bit of your background and how we can tap into your knowledge tonight.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, sorry, I can't always get on. I listen a lot in the background, or I listen later. I'm off traveling and things, so Basically, how Buck and I met was through YouTube itself. I used to watch Buck back in the days when him and Roz used to shoot it through basically, what was it? A magnifying glass, I think, with a bottle of water. It was like watching sonar.
Yeah. We used to do it with a film with a potato back in the day.
Pretty much. But no, one of the things I got into forward driving camping, I've been involved with camping companies in the background. I've also then, obviously now I work at Zone RV. The reason why I haven't been on as much the last few years, I've been quite busy there with helping Zone RV build a better product and, building a team and all the rest that goes with that. So I sat in the CEO role for a few years, which was really good fun, some good challenges. But about 6 months ago, I moved across to Chief Brand Officer. So we got to a point in the business where we wanted to grow and develop again. And a good friend of mine who also knows, some of you may know, Brad Hooker, he's jumped into the CEO spot. So he's at home there. And between him and I and the rest of the team, we're, hopefully building some better products for people to get out there and camp. So something I'm doing myself now, Lisa and myself travel full time on the road. Lisa works 25 hours minimum a week for one of the local councils back in our home state of Queensland. And I continue to go meet our dealers, customers, do testing, do videos and all sorts of things. So, no, I'm out there in the thick of it. Love it. Still got to connect with back at home and all of our staff and the design team and stuff. So it's really interesting. And it's actually been good for me to get back in the product and get out there with people. And like Brad and I'll talk tonight, we've even had a new car built, and then I've had Bradley have a look at some of that stuff. So we'll talk a lot of that stuff. But no, big fan, obviously. Always enjoy getting on and encouraging other people. I think that's my passion in life, trying to encourage people. But been red since about 1987. Got sunburnt and it never went away. So I appreciate it. So Kylie, you're not worrying me at all. My camera crew always have to turn the white up. So if you look at one of our vans and you think they're ultra white, that's more because of me, because they're trying to make me look less red. So it's pretty funny, but I'm good for it. Bring it on.
Yeah, you're in a zone at the moment, mate, and beautiful caravans. And we'll talk to Brad soon. Brad's actually got a Zone RV, and I've got a little video clip here, I think, and we'll show people soon. But mate, some people may not know that everyone goes on about, the community and all this type of stuff. Back in the day, you were working for Drifter, mate, and you opened the first ever Drifter store at Brendale and in Brisbane and that. And I don't know how, but I was doing reviews on camping gear and camping orientated film clips back in the day. We're talking a long time. It's going back a long time now. Yep. And I was actually checking my emails one day, and I got an email from Adrian or Tofty Toft or Adrian Toft from Drifter. And you said, hey, mate, I buddy like your channel. I'd like you to do some reviews for us from Drifter. And that's how it all started, mate. And for anyone who doesn't know, we keep banging on about the community, the Buckaroony community, the Legends community, all that type of stuff. Well, the bloke on your screen at the moment, up the top, he is the man who started it all. And you did, Tofty, whether you like it or not, mate. When you started with Drifter, you started the Drifter fans camping events, and you started that community spirit back then. And we were raising money for bales of hay for a farmer and all that type of stuff, mate. And I basically got my inspiration off you and continued it on. So you were the one who started this community. It's flowed on from the Drifter days, mate, to the Buckaroony days, and then to the Legends days, and now Brad and the boys down in the Hunter Valley and Newcastle are picking up the baton and going to run one next year. And then Ed and Naz down in Victoria, where you are at the moment, Tofty, you're going to run one in 2026, mate. It's continued on, and it's from something you started many, many years ago, mate. You should be proud of that. I'm sure you are.
Yeah, no, I'm passionate about community, as you know, and I became a youth worker and a community development worker. And the reasons I did that, because I was in business myself for a lot of years, and I grew up in a really well-off family, but it doesn't immune you from a lot of things, obviously. But one of the things I learned through all of those times, I think I've said it 100 times before, I grew up near a pub, and the country club across the road is actually where people did really good community. I mean, they didn't do everything great, don't get me wrong. I'm not an advocate for go out to pubs every night. But it was really good where people came together and supported and looked after each other. And I think what I sort of learned when I went and worked with Drifter and the guys was Hooker and I had talked about community as well, and that's the guy who's now CEO at Zone.
Wonderful bloke.
He's been in Scouts his whole life, but it was sort of like, how do you help other people if you've had a good start in life, or you've had opportunities and others haven't? I've always had a passion for how do we give someone a bit of a leg up, help, whatever. So that's what I've sort of got involved in. I just pay credit to that. Like, you think about it now, I'm going to camp in someone's backyard tomorrow night. Basically, I don't know them from Borough Soap other than they're a Zone owner, and they live about 10 minutes from the spot that I need to be in Melbourne. Full access to their 2.5 acre property, whatever you want, whenever you need it. Now, how that started, I just camped near them up in Queensland at our handover process place, and they just bumped into me one night, and Elisa and I just went and camped right beside them, and they were like, geez, aren't you the bloke from Zone? I said, yeah. What are you doing now? I said, I just thought I'd come and say g'day, see what you're up to, and we just started a little relationship. And same as Brad, I drove through Newcastle a couple of weeks ago, got my car serviced, old mate helped me sort all my gear out. I can't think of the guy's name, Brad, but one of the guys off the channel basically pulled in. So you just get to meet really good people. And like what we're doing tonight, we're connecting with people. I truly believe that it encourages people. And I think more people will live a better life if they do a bit of this stuff. And I'm a far richer, better person for hanging out with you guys and everyone on this channel than by myself. So that's my experience.
Yeah, exactly right, mate. And some of the friendships that have been formed through this community that you started is absolutely fantastic. Tofty, you, as I said, you used to be the CEO of Zone RV, which is one of the more well-known caravan companies in Australia, mate. Zone's, when you talk about Kedron and Lotus, and there's a lot of big names. So Zone's right up there with the big boys, mate. You're one of the big boys. Your product is absolutely fantastic. You were the CEO there for a few years, and now you're the chief brand officer or whatever, which, as I said, I'm sure you're happy with this. It allows you to get out now and travel and see the country. And people think, oh, Tofty's on a big trip at the moment. Well, he is, but you're working on the road as well for Zone RV, mate, getting the name out there. You just did a wonderful series up to Cape York, and you travelled up to Cape York. And if anyone hasn't seen it, the channel's Zone RV. Go and watch Tofty and Elisa and that do their trip up to Cape York. And that's what going to tap into Tofty's knowledge now. He's done a lot of kilometres towing a caravan, guys. So tonight, Tofty, we're going to tap into your knowledge, mate, about things. If people got caravans, but you've also travelled with camper trailers. You used to own dot trailers and that too, mate. So we'll tap into your knowledge there. So, thanks for that. Now, Brad, I'm sure everyone knows your thing, but, mate, just a bit of background on you.
Started as an apprentice motor mechanic at Felton Ford at Cessnock back in 1982 in January, and worked there for 4 years, did my apprenticeship, and then moved to Ultratune. And I was an employee for one of the franchisees that owned a couple of centres in the Hunter area. And then I pretty much went into partnership with one of my great mates, Jeff Isles, at Jesmond in those days. And then the opportunity came up here at Green Hills in Maitland to take that, to buy and take that centre over, and I did. And so that was, and then all of our three boys are qualified motor mechanics, and the eldest and the youngest have taken the business over, and they now run it. So Mary and I are out of it completely. There's no Tofty, I knew as soon as I said that you were going to say something.
I'm holding it together, mate.
Yeah, I know. They run the whole thing now. We have no responsibility in the business at all, and we're there to help them and step in when we need to, and that. And the other thing is, I can see some of the comments here. I can't unfortunately reply to everybody, but g'day everyone. It was Wixie that came and called in the other day, Tofty.
That's right. Nice guy, really good guy.
From Gunnedah, he'd been down in Newcastle to look at a job. So great place. Yeah.
So Alex and Ryan are at Ultratune now, and your other son, who I haven't met, Brad, he's a mechanic as well. I didn't know that.
I forgot. Yeah, no, he's qualified. He's actually an IT specialist at one of the councils up the valley.
Oh, right. I did his apprenticeship in that as well.
Yeah, he's a qualified mechanic. He was there for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years after he finished his time,
Yeah.
I guess, and then decided he wanted to get into IT. Computers has always been his passion. He's always loved to do with computers, and he's good at it. And yeah, so he does IT up there. Yeah.
Oh, good stuff.
Really well too. Actually, they just moved into their first. Him and his fiance just moved into their first house on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff, mate. You're a good mechanic. I can vouch for that. When Roz and I went through Newcastle on our trip down to Tasmania and back last year, Brad spent a couple of days going over the BT50 and our caravan and all that type of stuff. And I'll tell you what, mate, I was just in awe watching how you worked, mate, and just how calm you were. I didn't see one spanner get thrown across the workshop when things weren't going right. It's a tough job, mate. Like nothing is easy for a mechanic. Like you can guarantee the part you're trying to get to will be in, and you've got to pull 3 other things off to get to the part you've got to get to. And just watching you work, mate, and just it was incredible. I just thought, geez, I wish I had half the skills that you've got. It was good to watch, and I really appreciate you for bloody what you did with the BT50 and the caravan, mate, and it just went through with a fine-tooth comb, and that's why we're going to tap into your knowledge, mate. So, as a lot of you know, we've all been on big trips. We've got big trips planned. I mean, I've got another one planned September next year. We're traveling from far north Queensland all the way down to the Hunter Valley again for the Camping with Mates event in September next year to catch up with a lot of you good people in the section there, the comment section. And from far north Queensland, it's a big trip. You've just been up here recently, Tofty. It's a big country, mate. You're now down in Victoria. You have covered some kilometres. And I know for a fact even when you're around Innisfail here, mate, you had the 300 series booked into the workshop, and you've just been in and to Ultra Tune, and you're always getting maintenance done on the road. We'll talk more about that too. But guys, if anyone's got some really good questions of Brad or Tofty, put them up. If I see them, I will bring them up on the screen if I can, so we can do that. But Brad, I might start off first, mate. Most of us out there have got a 4-wheel drive, and a lot of us also tow. But it doesn't just count with 4-wheel drives. It means if you're going on a big holiday from Queensland to South Australia or something, and you're in a normal car. I know a lot of us will probably get our car booked in at our local mechanic to get things checked over and get a basic service done. We'll start off with a basic service, mate. What should be done on a basic service? Now, I know in the logbook, you look at the servicing schedule in the logbook, and it says what everything should be done. And guys, and Brad will probably touch on this too, if you have not read the maintenance section in your logbook for your particular vehicle, read it, because in there, it tells you at what kilometres or intervals everything needs to be done. And it starts with drive belts, engine oils, oil filters and that. And it tells you exactly when you need to change that. My question to you, Brad, when you were in UltraTune, did you actually read the logbooks, mate, and work out exactly, this car's come in, it's got 60,000 on there? Do you actually look at the logbook and go, right, I need to inspect that, replace that? Or do mechanics just got their own type of checklist that they work through when it comes to a basic service on a vehicle?
So the answer to that question is absolutely yes. We do know what the logbook says. We don't look through the logbook per se. It's all digitized these days. So it's a computer program. You click on Mazda, you click on BT50, you click on 2012, 3.2 litre, 4x4, manual, auto, whatever. And then it actually pre-populates with the amount of kilometres that are on the car, what's actually itemized in that actual schedule. I would say, though, that after a period of time, though, with a lot of vehicles, you get to know things that should be replaced that aren't in the schedule, or things that are in the schedule probably a little bit more often. For instance, and sometimes less often as well. I remember I can't tell you what year it was, but it wasn't that long ago, that Toyota had a specification for the Toyota Kluger. Now, they were I think a 3.5 litre V6 petrol. They had their fuel filters, I think, at 80,000 kilometres, and they're in an in-tank fuel filter, and they're a big job to get out. You got to pull back off and pull the floor up and pull the seats out and all that sort of stuff. You'd end up pulling them out, and there was nothing wrong with them. And we did that time and time and time again. So we sort of said to the customers, look, we've found in the past that this doesn't really need doing that all that often, based on previous vehicles that we've done. And, you know, there could have been 20 or 30 that we've done before that. It's up to you. Would you like us to change it or not? And most people would go, oh, well, if you don't think it needs to be done, don't do it. Well, to our surprise, now that's nothing to do with me, but obviously Toyota had seen the same type of instances, and they moved that out to now 120,000 kilometres. So that just sort of goes to show you that there are some things that, you know, are listed in the handbook that don't need to be done so often, and there are some things that do need to be done more often. It's like we were talking there before we come on air about the drive belts, and one of the things that I would recommend people replace, if they replace a drive belt, replace the automatic adjuster if it's got one as well, because those things do weaken after a while, and they will throw a belt off quicker than anything. So they're not that much more expensive. Replace the automatic adjuster at the same time, and then that way, then you don't have any problems with it going forward. So
we had a great, probably a little bit early for this, but I don't want to, because this is an important question from Dave. How are you, mate? Are you still over in Thailand? Brad, if you had a brand new car, can you take it to any service centre and keep the warranty intact? That is a very, very, very good question.
Yes, Dave, I do remember you, mate. He commented earlier.
Guys, if you're wondering.
Yeah. And the answer is yes, you can. You can take it to any licensed mechanic. Now, any mechanics in New South Wales all have to be licensed, and workshops have to be licensed as well. So the answer to your question is yes, you can take it wherever you like, as long as it's done in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications. You're covered under warranty. That's written in Australian consumer law.
Well, there you go. As long as they stick to the logbook and do everything there. Mm-hmm. So, mate, it's good to know that, and I've seen that. I know when people come in and book their car in, Alex's wife, and I'm sure Mary did the same thing. They will go, right, I've got to do a service, a 40,000 service on a Toyota Corolla or a BT50 or whatever, and you would come into the workshops and you go to that shelf, and I've seen how you do it. Absolutely, just ran like clockwork, mate. And you'd have the oil filter, the fuel filter, blah, 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 all that type of stuff there. So you had the parts, you pre-ordered the parts. So you didn't order the parts on the day. You just had the parts there the day before, ready to go for that day. It just, seeing UltraTune work there, mate, when I was watching you do your stuff, and the boys were, Alex and Ryan, they were servicing other vehicles at the same time, mate. It just really, really smooth. And you could see there was a system in place, and everything had a place. It was just a really well-run workshop. I've seen other workshops where you walk in and go, how do these blokes know where anything is? They're just a shitball. But your UltraTune workshop, mate, was just like clockwork. It was really well run. And that's how you want your mechanic to just walk in and look organised and know what's going on. But it's good to know you've got a computer program there that you can pull up and say, right, this BT50's coming in. These are the things I've got to tackle tomorrow on a basic service and that. But let's go a little bit further, Brad. If I'm going on a trip and I've just had a service 3,000 kilometres ago, I don't need a service for another 7,000. Let's just go through a few things that we can do ourselves if we're not mechanically minded. Like I know a little bit, I know a little bit about vehicles and that, but something the average Joe can do to check their car before they go away on a trip, mate.
Look, the most things I would say would be all the fluid levels that you can get at. It's sometimes impossible to get under the vehicle and check transfer cases and manual gearboxes and differentials, things like that. That's really difficult to do in some instances. But the main things are tyre pressures. Probably just go over your wheel nuts and just make sure they're all tight. Check all of your engine oil level, your power steer fluid if it's got that sort of system. Check your washer bottle, your coolant levels. Just have a look underneath, and just the more I used to say to people, the more that you actually open that bonnet, the more you'll understand what's not right. So when you see things that are right, you'll get a picture in your mind as to how it should look. And then when you open it one day and something is, oh, hang on, that wasn't there last time. What's going on there? So just the usual things that anybody would say that would be the normal things that you would check as a motorist. I mean, before a pilot gets in an aeroplane, they check their aircraft over. They refuel it. They check oil levels. They check belts. They check, flight control surfaces, landing gear, tires, all that sort of stuff. That is required under CASA rules. So, no different to what we do in a car. And I guess the problem is these days is that cars are inherently reliable. As much as we think that they aren't, go back 40 years and to a time when, I remember my dad, before we'd even drive, down to Sydney, he would, take the distributor cap off and take the points out and clean them and file them. And that's how I got my interest in cars, watching Dad do all that stuff. And my dad wasn't a mechanic by any stretch of the imagination. But he could do all of that stuff himself, and he was a prison officer for the majority of his life. So,
at Maitland, isn't there?
What's that, mate?
At Maitland?
Yeah, at Maitland. Yeah, it was maximum security there. Yeah. So, there's all of those things that used to happen that don't happen any longer. We'd get in the car in the old days and we'd have to decide whether we're going to give it one pump on the throttle or three if it was really cold, and then pull the choke out and then start the car and then try and, juggle the throttle with the choke. And, we'd have to sort of use our brain a little bit. But nowadays, if the car doesn't start on the first few revolutions under cranking, there's a problem somewhere, because we've got systems in cars now that automatically add extra fuel through the injection process when the engine is cold, for instance. I mean, that requirement in an engine hasn't changed. The basics of an internal combustion engine have been the same for 100 years nearly. So actually probably more. But the management systems certainly have, and the ignition systems certainly have. So, all of that's changed a long way. And obviously engines with electronic control are significantly more efficient than what they used to be as well.
Yeah. I remember I put my old TE Cortina in for a service, and you knew it needed a tune-up. Used to say putting it in for a tune-up, and that's exactly what you used to do, mate. You'd have to put the timing light over because you knew your car was out of tune. Nowadays, with these, direct injection and diesel engines and that, you don't tune them up anymore unless you want to get better performance out. A service is basically check the fluids, change the oil and all that type of stuff. They don't actually tune a vehicle up anymore. The old timing light days, there's probably still some vehicles around that you've got to do that, Brad, but not a lot, mate.
No, I'd argue that, even to the point of a carburetor on a car these days is virtually non-existent. The young guys these days, they tune cars with these things, a laptop with a computer program.
Not a timing light,
and look at what they can do with a right program. And you've got really smart guys like Matt at Just Autos up in Queensland that really gets those Land Cruiser 300s just absolutely unbelievable. I've driven that one at Tofty's, and it's just the most amazing thing you'll ever drive. I mean, it's just incredible. And those guys are experts at it. And I'm not an expert in those fields at all. I mean, you got to remember, I existed back in a time when, we did reset, replace points and spark plugs and, set ignition timing and dwell angles and carburetor mixtures and cruise mixtures and all that sort of stuff. You can't do that now. It's not possible. And that's a good thing, because we've got a lot more efficiency and we've taken the human out of the link in that way. But The way that those guys do it these days, they can get some incredible results. It's amazing.
Hey, Brad, as I said, there's certain things we can do. If we're going away on a big trip and you go into your mechanic, what are some of the major points that you should be reminding your mechanic? Say, I'm going away on a big trip, and this is what I do with my mate. Say, mate, I'm going down to Tassie. I need you to check everything over. Let's maybe a list of 10 or whatever, some of the most vital things that you should get your mechanic to check before you go on a long trip, and say to him, if it's not right, replace it. What are some of the major things that we need to tell our mechanics to look for, mate? Obviously, they're going to check the oils and change the oil and all that type of stuff. Check our diff levels, our transfer case if it's a manual, gearbox, all that type of stuff, front and rear diff, blah, 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 CV joints if you can do it. Some of the other things, mate.
I'd say give the cooling system a very good pressure test. And check all the hoses and make sure that they're all in good condition. They're not excessively soft, because one of the things that happens with a hose, if you get oil on it, they're not oil resistant, believe it or not. The coolant hoses, radiator hoses and heater hoses and whatnot, they'll get really soft if they're exposed to oil for any length of time. So if you've got an oil leak, that's a problem. If they get overly hard, they become inflexible, a little bit like our arteries in our bodies. If they're too hard, they don't work properly. So I check drive belts, accessories, to make sure that one of the things that used to be a problem on the Navara, on the D40s, was the overrunning clutch pulley on the alternator used to fail. So whenever anyone would say, excuse me, give it a good check over, I would generally replace that, because if it hasn't failed yet, I know it's going to. So that's part of that information that you learn as the cars get a little bit older. You can then say, okay, this is a consistent problem on these vehicles. Let's replace it now. And hopefully, through the mechanic's previous experience, you get away, and you don't have any major issues. You want to make sure the brakes are okay, obviously, and adjusted correctly if they've got drums in the rear, which most four-wheel drives still have on the rear. Unfortunately, they're moving very quickly over to discs on the rear, but that's not happening anywhere near quick enough as far as I'm concerned. I think it should have happened a long time ago. Probably replace, with diesels especially, halve the interval that fuel filters are replaced at. I would say go to probably, most cars in that type are 40,000 k, halve it to 20. Tofty made the
I do, mate. I do fuel filters 20,000 on the BT, and it recommends 40 in the manual.
Yeah, Tofty made the comment the other day, and it's absolutely spot on, that oil and filters are cheap compared to a $20,000 engine. Because it's the way these days that if you need to replace an engine in a vehicle, it's almost scrap value. It's that they're that expensive to buy, whereas maintenance is not that difficult. And we used to see a lot of cars come in. The worst one I ever saw was a Mitsubishi Magna that had 110,000 kilometers on it. And when I looked at the sticker on the windscreen, it said next oil change at 1,500. So it had never had it. Seriously, it had never had an oil change in its life, and I confirmed that with the owner. And when we took the tappet cover off, it was a V6, a 3 or 3.5 liter V6, and I took the tappet cover off, and it was just like Vegemite sludge in the top of it. I said, "It's gone. It's gone. It's dead."
Wow, that's unbelievable. Brad, we'll come back to some more on the vehicles. We'll let Tofty have a say. Tofty, camper trailers and caravans, mate, before a big trip. Some of the things that I know you've got, your caravans, you use Zone RV, so you know that they're serviced well and all that, and they're still in very, very, very good condition. The one you're in at the moment's basically brand new, mate. It's the new Summit version. Some people have got older caravans. I've got an old second-hand Jayco that's about 7 or 8 years old. Some of the things that you need to check before you go on a big trip, mate, starting from probably the front and working through to the back. From experience, you know what can go wrong.
Yeah, just like what Brad said before, I'm really passionate about preventative maintenance. Now, it
Yeah,
all
exactly.
comes down to
Preventative. Yeah.
it comes down to your budget as well. Obviously, like people can go overboard. Now, most people wouldn't know. I left school at 15. I started my own harvesting business, and I was a cane harvesting contractor in Queensland. So I used to run machinery 7 days a week. I was running like, you know, our harvesters were 350 to 500,000. They all had, you know, massive wheels. They all had airbags. So way back in the 90s, we were doing that. Now, one of the things, excuse you, Bradley, grease and oil change. One of the things that we had to do was obviously preventative maintenance allowed you to actually harvest every day. So, I mean, we used to cut every day for about 140 days straight.
Yeah.
So I'm passionate about, and Brad will tell you, like I just got my new van. Brad and I were in the caravan park. How long had I had that for, Brad? About a month. And I said, can we jack up the wheels? Let's check the rims, tires, the bearings. I'm going to be one of those people who are more aggressive with testing, checking, doing that stuff. I change nearly as often as I change the oil, the fuel filters, because I'm the guy, I don't want to get stopped, because I have been in those situations when I was younger that I didn't do that, and it always left me E for enough. You know, you're emptying your tank, you know, the old E for enough, we'll get there. Nah, next minute you're on the side of the road with a diesel, she's ugly. So I've just tried my best. So in my caravan, I'm the same, and it's harder for me because often I'm changing vans, and I've just gone through a total change of car, change of van, and everything just is like, I don't know where the hell anything is, basically. You know, I've got to work out those noises, what's happening here. It's a similar car, it's a similar van, but things change. So I've always done like logs. I think it's really important that you actually log what you do, because what happens is things go pear shape and you fix one bearing and not the other three. You never write it down, then you end up fixing things that you don't need to. And most people do really good logs in most of their life, and it seems like cars and camper trailers, we don't. I'm encouraging everyone out there, if you do, I think it actually helps when you sell it. So if you on sell a van, which any of the ones I've done, yeah, there you go. Buck's got it in his scribble.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately incoherent. No one could read that, Buck, but get into a format someone could read. But no, it's really important because, again, too, in my own accountability, I can go back and check and go, yeah, I did check the wheel nuts yesterday. So you talked about it before. We went to Cape York, mate. I definitely I check my wheel nuts and that every day. I'm out there checking tires. I run airbags in the back of the car, so I check them. I check the exhaust where it's hanging out. Brad will tell you, I'm one of those people, I'm always looking for rattles and noises, aren't I? Like, I hate those things. They just annoy the hell out of me. So I'm fanatical about that stuff. So I think, like in our camper trail, so, you know, I've done a trip to Cape York where I basically just took my car and it had 320,000 Ks in a little Prado, and I took two Oz tent bunkers, and me and my son went up for 4 weeks. So I know what it's like to camp on the side of the road with things like that. But we ended up getting a little oil leak. We ended up having a few little issues. Now, I had done everything to that car where I thought that I could get it back to like a new car. And what I realized, it's such a challenge when it sort of got to a point, that car, a good friend had said, I want you and the young fella to go and do this trip. I want you to teach him a few things about rebuilding stuff and doing all that stuff. I think we bought the car for $5,000. I reckon I spent 25 on it, and I think I sold it for 10 grand. So I learned one of life's most valuable lessons. Do not because I'm just too fanatical. I was new diff, like rebuilt diff, gearbox, but everything in between that, there's all these little intricate things that fail. So preventative maintenance is massive. Carry a grease gun. You find most people who caravan and camp, they never carry one. And because it's difficult, it's not easy. But I think Super Cheap and those sort of places have made that easier. They have little ones, but that's something we see in our industry. So we service heaps, thousands of vans a year across the nation. It's one of the biggest things you see. People haven't greased it. people, all of our vans we log, like they all have their service intervals, but there's also an odometer on every van. Because what happens is, you guys have all done it. You go and do all these trips. No one really thinks about how many Ks, and you think, oh, I think I did 5,000. Like this year alone, Elisa and I have done 26,000 kilometers.
Wow.
Now that's spread over 2 vans, but this van here now, Brad, I've done since I've caught up with you. It's now sitting at nearly 10,000 kilometers. I've done 5,300 in my new 300, which I got 3.5 weeks ago. So we've been from the top of Australia back. We've done the back to Melbourne and back to Queensland 3 times now this year, and this has all been in the last sort of 4 months. So we're definitely doing some miles, and we go a lot of different ways and outback. You know, this was the first time I did the coast run. I'm not really, even though I'm red, I don't really like the coast as much because I like camping away from people. But because we do a lot of that sort of camping, I've always got a few little spares there. Now, I'm not the greatest mechanic like you, Buck, but this man here is, and it's really good to, I would say, and I'm not putting this on Brad, but I love having a Brad in my toolbox as a friend who I can just lean on a little bit to go, Brad, in your, experience, do you think this, or could it be this? And I think, Brad, that's what's really cool about mechanics, and you and I talked about this today. I feel like now you're my mechanic, and you're my mate, first of all, but it's really good to, have people that I think, especially with the mechanical side, get a few second opinions, and we'll talk about that tonight. My car, I was up staying with Buck, my original VX300, which I'd done 125,000 kilometers. They told me I needed new brakes, and now I organised that, went down to Brad's. I was going to get his boys to put it in there. Brad takes the wheel off, and what was the answer, Brad?
Not even close.
They weren't. I was told they were gone, and I'm really passionate about making sure I never put my family in danger, obviously other people and all that stuff. But unfortunately, someone had led me up the garden path, and it was just because you're a good mate. And you looked at me and said, you could do these, but, mate, I'm telling you, you don't need to. And I was still hesitant, wasn't I? I was sort of like, oh, mate, just do them. Nah, I don't want to do them, mate. It's a waste of your money.
That pisses me off hearing that, Tofty. I mean, we go to our doctor and we put all our faith in what our doctor tells us is right. And not far behind him probably is your mechanic. I mean, if you're not a mechanic yourself, you rely on your mechanic to keep you safe and your family safe. You know what I mean? Like it's a bloody important job being a motor mechanic, Brad. As you know, people's lives are in your hands if you don't do the job properly, mate. Especially when it comes to brakes and stuff like that. But when they purposely just make shit up to get money out of you, it pisses me off hearing that, and it. Bloody wrong. It really is.
Sometimes the case too, mate. Like especially now, like I see Ty on there before, just talking about, he knows a lot and does his own stuff. I'm not like as good, obviously, as what Ty can do. I've seen him on his channel, but one of the things I would say is because I'm, look at the gear I'm driving around with. People then automatically put a bit of a tax on you. They think, well, you're cool for it. You've got the bucks. To me, it's not about the money. It's more about ethics. Like if I'm coming in there, I'm a bit like what you said, Buck. You're trying to trust people. And I think that's why people like Brad and his family have been successful. And any organization, trust me, I run 300 people. It's really hard to get everyone rowing the same way, doing the exact right thing every day, 365 days a year. And that's what's really sad sometimes. So the person who made that comment to me didn't own the business, may not have had that ethos. But that's what happens. And I think that's what's different in a smaller business. And that's actually like even my new 300, I've actually got a lot of people to work with me with that vehicle. But I've I think you've done nearly all my servicing now, Brad, and I'm coming back through there, and I'll probably line those guys up to do it again. Now, it's a new car and a new warranty. A little bit different, and we can talk about that if you like, but obviously it's been chopped, so it's modified. So
we're going to talk soon about that topic.
I've obviously got some different issues with that, but I just think with caravans are the same. I say to people, most people, we use Cruise Master, we use Red Arc, we use Webasto, all these different brands. A lot of the reasons we use those brands is because of their service agents and the skills that they have. I think that's where sometimes it's more challenging with different things where I really like Victron and things like that. But what I found was traveling across Australia, it's not always as easy to find those places that have that. So sometimes there are really good products, but it's just finding the right people to service them. So again, Victron's excellent. There's, you've worked with iTech World and all sorts of people. I don't really care what people use, whether it's Kings or whatever, as long as you're out camping and enjoying it. But I think it's just getting people to help you service it or know something about it. And channels like yours and the YouTube and Ty Fenwick's and people like, I think it's better more people pull that stuff apart and show you, because even novices like me, then you can sort of get an understanding. Phil put down here about 3D printing. Unfortunately, we can 3D print cars, but they won't stay together long, Phil. But as we do large scale printing, but I think it's really, for me, preventative maintenance is the key. And I think you can never kill a car in a lot of ways by overlooking at it and just working out what you need to do. But you got to balance that with weight and carrying way too much stuff. And Brad's pretty good at that, like full-time mechanic, yet he's not carrying a whole second everything.
No, I saw that the other day. Brad's having comms problems there, guys. Hey, my BT50, the wheel bearings at the front there, they're like a sealed unit, Brad. I've had one replaced, but they're sealed units. Older vehicles, you can check the bearings. How often should we check our wheel bearings on our four-wheel drives, our vehicles, and Tofty on our caravans? I've got mine booked in on the 16th with Kenny Hop, taking the Jayco up and getting the bearings either repacked, and if Kenny's not happy with them, we'll replace them, because I don't know when those bearings were done last. How often should we check our wheel bearings? A, check them, and 2, replace them.
Well, that's a bit of a hard one. It's sort of like a how long's a piece of string type question, but to put it back down to basics is that if you're doing a lot of four-wheel driving, water crossings, things like that, you would obviously check them far more often than what you should do. Now, when it comes to trailers and caravans and that type of thing, that they all run basically the same type of bearing. Sometimes they can be a double row bearing, sometimes they can be individuals, and they're a lot easier to check than some four-wheel drives. But you were saying there a minute ago about the BT50 has got a sealed wheel bearing. I think they're actually encased in a hub assembly, so you can't actually get to the bearing itself.
No.
So you've got to you sort of got to take each car as it comes, basically. So, but definitely with caravans and whatnot, you check the wheel bearing adjustment, and that's not hard to do. Jack it up, grab the wheel at the 12 and the 6 o'clock position, and try and rotate it sort of in and out, so push out at the top and in at the bottom. So sort of that motion, if you like, sideways. And if there's any play there, then take the cap off and adjust it, or get it into your mechanic and get them to adjust it. One of the biggest problems that we find with people that are adjusting wheel bearings is they actually over adjust them. They're too tight. And so with a conical bearing, what it does, it actually tends to wear them out because it jams the bearing into its cone far too hard. So that can be a substantial problem.
Tofty, how often do you check your bearings, mate? How often do you recommend when you do a very thorough handover with Zone RVs? How often do you recommend to check your bearings? And
I think it's every 10,000, Braden, in our book. And we basically get people to, obviously we have all our service intervals. We have a proper genuine book for all that. Or something I was pretty passionate to make sure our guys do that. I think, like Brad said, this is where it gets a bit murky. Is people, well, yourself, I was there again this year. I've been up a few times, but the Cape Yorks, the Gibbs, the places where you're crossing water, you're in really hotter probably conditions and pretty, a lot of corrugations. that's when I just change things quicker. Like I shorten that interval up because I feel like things I know if I've pushed them further.
Yeah.
So I think with wheel bearings and things like Brad said, the best thing you can do is exactly look. Me and Brad did it in the caravan park, didn't we? You came down one morning, we jacked it up, we did the 6 and 9 o'clock shuffle. Brad, said, "No, mate, these are," because I actually was concerned one night. I sort of felt like, hey, the boys changed actually my hubs. I put some nice new Method wheels on, so I knew it wasn't the factory guys who had done it. And not that I'm not trusting anyone else, but I'm obviously going. I know everything goes out from our factory. We take a video, we take shots, we put in a system called Trello, so then you can see it and everything's marked. But when someone else sometimes plays with your things and it's, no problem with theirs, but I like to double check. And Brad helped me do that. And because I changed vans too, things change, brake settings are different. I've changed cars, everything's different. So I don't think we found any that needed adjusting, did we, Brad?
No, they were all fine. You were concerned that they were over adjusted and getting too hot.
Yeah, because I carry a little heat gun that I check bearings. So that's, I think Maniac got us onto the uni things. You can go in and buy like a $50 or $100 heat gun where you can obviously check your, if you're making corn dogs, check the temperature buck, but also check your bearings. Like, mate, that is one of the simplest things I've ever had. I used to use it on all my machinery. I'd just walk around and check all my bearings and hubs.
Where do you buy those bloody things from? I've always been taught, put your hand on, if you stop at a servo for a break, put your hands on the bearings, and if it's scorching hot, you've got some problems.
Brad, but they're pretty easy to get, Brad, aren't they? I think Repco, anyone has.
Phil, where do you...
Yeah, you can buy them. They're just a little laser thermometer, basically. And bear in mind, though, the further the distance you are away from what you're checking is the more inaccuracies there are. So it's using a laser dot. Sorry, Tofty?
Yeah, just get really close to it. But I found like that's one of the quickest things. And if not, like you said, Buck, I've been burnt by touching really hot bearings on machinery in the past. So that's hence why I don't do that. But I think that's a really important thing. And it's just like, yourselves, if you've traveled in dusty conditions, check all your, your bolts and everything because you see stuff moving. I think the other one that I think people miss a lot is the electrical side of things. You look under people's batteries and stuff, they're moving, there's things loose. Like we're up the Cape this year. We just saw so many people who had little silly electrical things because they actually didn't even look under their bonnets. And it's because, like Brad said earlier, our cars are so reliable. Hence, people don't even open the bonnet hardly because you don't need to. But when you're remote, and the other thing I think people make a huge, challenge for themselves, they use socks, which are fine on their air cleaners, but then they struggle to either clean them properly or change them. And, it tends to, with modern cars, Brad's a better person to talk about this, but I chose this trip not to run any of that, which I have in every other trip. Now, I found it actually, I didn't have a problem, but again, bit of education. I don't follow really close. I try and stay as much as I can away from other cars, but you can't always do that, obviously, in Cape York. But I don't know. They're the things I think that's challenging to clean on the road unless you do it properly. And I just run genuine filters and everything. I just change them way more regular. It's the same in our vans. I change my filters. If you're running an older toilet system, just get things changed more. And I think it's like fan belts, tires. I say to people all the time, I haven't had a tire failure, I reckon, in 10 years, but I really get on top of my tires. If they're 20% left, I'm not driving in the Cape York. Probably 40%, I probably would. But and I'm not here trying to tell people to go out and buy new stuff all the time. I think you got to think if you're going very remote, because I can tell you, I've had a rollover in Cape York. I've had a car failure in Cape York. I was 20 k's off the beach at Bathurst Bay, and Elisa and I will definitely get back there. I've tried 3 times. Every time I've gone to that area, something happens. I don't know if it's me or the car or the world, but I will get there. But I'll tell you, it breaks you as a trip. We drove all the way up there, had a failure, and I can tell you what it was a $5 Brad, they call them a hot wire thing where it heats up like a fuse that heats up and separates, and when it cools down, it joins. I didn't know the guy put that in my car, so we would drive and then it would stop, then it would start, then it would stop. I drove the whole way back because I couldn't get anyone to fix it. A guy eventually, I changed the fuel pump, I changed all these other things, and realised in the end it was a $5 fuse.
Oh wow!
Does your head in. So
they're called a resettable circuit breaker, and they shouldn't be on cars as far as I'm concerned, because what happens, they're a bimetallic strip and they're like a little set of contact points. So when they get too hot, they open and so the different strip on the top gets shorter and it opens the contact, and then of course they cool down, and what happens, you've got an electrical fault there, and close the contact again, and then it rejoins the circuit. So if it's a fuse, it'll blow the fuse. If it's a resettable circuit breaker, then it'll flip the little lever down. But one thing that I learned from a young fella next door to me here, he's a leco, and on the really like high energy circuits, like if you had a 250 amp resettable circuit breaker on a say an inverter line, for instance, and going from your battery, what can happen is apparently they can get like a plasma on the inside of them, and it'll actually stop them from working properly. So they don't always work as they're designed, and that in that way, a mega fuse, or in smaller instances, a midi fuse, is a lot better.
Yeah, I run everything. Well, you saw Brad was with me, my new 300. What I did, I like one person doing all the electrics, and then you control it. And Brad was with me, a young guy. We got nice guy, but experienced. But we eventually did it all at Brad's place. But he did the whole job, because I cannot stand, you got all these different people doing things. No one seems to. I actually over-engineered it by a mile, but because of Brad's, skill sets in that, and he's not an electrical engineer or anything, but we just talked about what I was trying to do and the amount of power I wanted to move. I made sure I did that. And yeah, I'm with you, Ty. Like auto leco, it's hard to find a good one. If you can find one, which we did, and I know Brad, like, we won't name the guy, but like really good work, and did exactly what we asked for. And that my car then showed, didn't it, Brad? Like, we wanted to get, say, 50 amps to the back of probably a 14 meter run, and I think we got 48.7.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the charger was putting out. So you were basically, you gave the system the everything that it needed to work to its capacity, because it's a long run. I mean, you look at the distance between your battery and that charger, and it's going through an Anderson plug, so there's a little bit of resistance loss there, but it was definitely the right thing to do to upgrade that cable to a 2-odd cable. And then, you basically give the electronic system that it's in there, electrical system that's in the van, the best possible environment to work in. And I think it's good for you too, Tofty, because now you can say anyone that orders a Summit should probably have this type of electrical system in their car to be able to use,
maximize it. Yeah,
exactly. And you've done a lot of work in the background. Your engineers have done a lot of work to get maximum amount of charge into the systems. That Red Arc system is absolutely brilliant. And they've done a lot of work in the background, and then it's let down because someone's using the wrong gauge wiring, or they've come from an older van that didn't have a big electrical system, and they don't understand, because the cabling going to a 240 volt outlet at home is significantly smaller than what's in their car. But they don't understand the fact that you've got 240 volts at 10 amps, which is 2400 watts, versus 12 volts at 10 amps, which is only 120 watts.
Right.
So it's all about electricity and how it works. And a basic understanding of that makes it a whole lot easier to understand how your vehicle is. And I think too that, as travelers, we should have a basic understanding of how the systems in our car and our van work. You should understand where the fuses are. You should understand where the connections are. they're all really good ways to sort of say, okay, I know where that fuse is, or if I haven't got anything on that line, where is that fuse? And we had that problem on your 300 that day, that it blew that fuse. You know, that was a weird one. Even the fuse wasn't blown, physically blown, but as soon as you put current anywhere near it, it just didn't want to work.
I think it's important too, as you said, lift the bonnet and at least know how to do the basics, mate. So when you lift the bonnet and you know how to check all your fluids and that, you pick up if something's wrong. I wish I knew a lot more about auto electrical stuff and mechanical stuff. I'm really lacking, but I'm probably better than some people. But there's people out there that probably don't know how to change a tyre, people that don't know how to check their oil.
I just encourage us all, Buck. I think that's where this tonight, more people will get than any of all that is in this group, you will have someone who can help you. So my experience was like when I rolled the trailer in Cape York, it was actually a YouTube community that helped me get out of there. So like, that's what I'm sort of saying. Like someone in this group, I saw Ty and people like down there, there's other people.
A lot of knowledge in here.
There's a lot of knowledge here that all these, Phil Taylor, there's heaps of people I keep seeing. I'm sorry I can't respond to you. Wixie, all these great people. You can get yourself out of a lot of trouble because I'm not a guru on any of that stuff. But I just ring. I know when we were stuck, I've rung friends and gone, hey, what do I need to do here? Can I do this? Can I run that there? Boom, get yourself out of trouble, or they'll tell you where to go, or who's the person. Probably even more important, take it here. I know this guy and I trust this guy. So people on here are really good at commenting, saying, someone went through before and said, I found someone who was really good. I'm probably like what Ty's saying. I'm really OCD. I like things all lined up. You'll see even my remotes, I put them all in a row on my phone. I'm one of those people. So I hate looking at stuff that's not done properly. But the thing that we probably haven't talked about too is that safety is actually, when I first followed you, was I saw Bubba Road. And I think it's like, you never know what's going to happen. So, we don't do this enough. I looked at my car and I said to Elisa, we got no water. We got 170 litres of water in that car, but no drinking water. If we would have had an accident or something today, where's my water? I did have my first aid kit, but it's all that sort of stuff I think is really important. Like WD-40, you talked about it years ago, having a bit of a pack that if something happens, like to me, I roll the van, nothing's in there, you need it in your car. Chainsaws are very handy to get you out of trouble. I'm in the high country here. There's so many trees being pushed over everywhere. So I think mechanically too, your jack doesn't always work, things like that. So I think that's what I don't know, because I've got
check
Starling.
Your jack. Yes. How long since you've checked, everyone out there, how long since you've got your jack out and actually made sure it works, whether it's a bottle jack or the scissor jack? Good point, mate. No use getting out there and your jack doesn't work when you're in the middle of nowhere.
That, a bit of grease, some gloves. I even take stuff so I can lay under the car now, because I was somewhere the other day.
A canvas tarp. I've got it in the back, mate, so you don't have to lie in the dirt.
Because you get under there and it's a bloody shit show, like you're laying in just, and I had the other day, I went down to fuel up my truck. Somehow the thing blew back, just gave me the full bath. Then I'm looking in the car going, I got nothing to take. So you would have seen a red and white Tofty drive away from that fuel stop.
I'll tell you what, we used to, in the army, and I used to think it was a bit silly, it was a bit overdone, but when we went on a convoy, we were lucky. If our vehicles broke down, we had the Ramey boys there. We had vehicle mechanics, auto elects and all that, if we think. But every time we went on a convoy, we had to do a first parade, a halt parade, and a last parade. And what that was, and there's probably some army guys in here that, Gidgey's there. First parade, if you got caught jumping in a Land Rover or a Unimog first thing in the morning and the old transport sergeant didn't see you lift the bonnet and get the wheel brace out, you were in deep shit. Like, you had to pull the bonnet up every day, check your oil, check your fluid levels, check your drive belts that they weren't, that they were still there and all that type of stuff. And then check your wheel nuts every morning before you drove off, without fail. Wheel nuts. If you had a trailer on, check your trailer's wheel nuts and all that type of stuff. If we stopped for a 2-hour break, the first thing you got out, stretch your legs, wheel brace out again, double check your wheel nuts, have a look under your vehicle, make sure there was no leaks of any fluids and all that type of stuff. Check your loads, because we always had camouflage nets and poles and all that tied down. We'd have to check our load, because back then we didn't have ratchet straps. We had to use the old truckies hitch and ropes to tie our cam nets down. So you always check your loads. And for those who don't know, always tie your loads down on the passenger side. So when you check them on the highway, you're checking them over on the passenger side, not the bloody driver's side, if you know what I mean. You're on the off side of the, so you're not checking your tie down points and all that type of stuff. I still do it to this day. If I tie something on the roof rack, I always do the bit of the ratchet strap that does that. I always do it on the passenger side. So if I want to check it on the side of the highway, I'm not over on the traffic side doing it. So checking stuff when you stop. Just don't go into the servo, buy a Chico roll. Actually check your vehicle. And Brad can probably go a bit more into this. When you put the vehicle away, we had to do all that type of stuff too. So we had a first parade in the morning and a halt parade. They're probably the two major ones, and I still do it. If I'm camped for a few days, Tofty, and I know you and Brad probably do it, you camped in the same spot for 3 days, how many of you's out there lift your bonnet and while you're sitting around at camp and you're not doing something? Take that time to check your wheel nuts, get under, have a look, make sure and know your vehicle. As you said, Tofty, when you're driving along, if you know your vehicle well, as soon as something doesn't sound right, you'll pick it up. Like your ears are a good way to go. There's something going on, there's something rattling loose or whatever. Always check everything on under your vehicle. Lift the bonnet and you'll know if something's out of there. So don't just sit around at your campsite. Check your oil, check your fluids, check your wheel nuts and all that type of stuff, because it could bloody
I think it gives you that better experience, but too, when you are camping, if you go back to people with vans or hitches and things, I hear a lot of people, so funny, like they'll take off and you can hear everything squawk and squeak, and because it's sort of not lubricated, obviously. I carry a can of WD-40 in the back of just in the back sort of passenger seats in a stubby cooler, because I know then if I see it there, I'll actually lubricate up some of those things. It's like where your chains hook on, just all that stuff. I think it's not hard. My experience is too, whenever I've sold something, if I've really looked after it well, it looks after me. You get better, a better return. And it doesn't matter. I've kept cars for 10 years or whatever. You can look after something. It looks after you. And I think especially caravans and things, because obviously people live in them, camper trailers. Well, we passed one today on the side of a road. It looks like the guy's been selling it for 15 years. It's just parked on the side of the road, grass growing out of it. And you just sort of think, like that's something no one's ever going to buy, So maintenance, I think, one, it gives you a good experience. That time I had that rollover, I had a 4-week holiday, and I ruined the whole 4 weeks because I couldn't bloody do it. So time's precious. So two things in Australia that's most precious, people always write down: time, and if you're going on a holiday, and the cost of having a trip to Cape York, you don't want to ruin it by bloody having all these things. So having a look, and even other people looking at your vehicle. Like my experience was, first trip up there, I had a bolt come out where I'd had some suspension work done. It was just my young fella was lying down in his swag, looked across and went, "Hey, Dad, there's a bolt missing." And then we were on the tele track. Holy hell, And luckily, because it was a sort of a common vehicle, we actually could get one while we were still on the track from another guy, and got us through. But, I think there's a good community is what I'm trying to say and I think we don't do enough. Utilize the community. We have these communities. Utilize them. I feel comfortable. I go anywhere in Australia now, a Buckaroony community or a zone or whatever, I reckon I could get myself through. If I had dramas, I would find someone in that community that would help me. My experience has been more people want to help you than harm you. So,
mate, yeah. And you'll find that if you're remote, there will be someone turn up and he's probably a mechanic or something like that. And there are a lot of guys out there, and Terry G's one of them, that is a jack of all trades, and there's always someone there. If you're in trouble out there, they'll they'll bloody stop over and give you a hand. Hey, we had a good question from Greggy Campbell before, Brad. When you put your car in for a service, a lot of us with our four-wheel drives have done some aftermarket type stuff. And we're talking about catch cans and a secondary fuel filter with the 30 micron, the fuel manager 30 micron filter. Is that something your mechanic will normally check on a basic service, or is it something we should ask the mechanic to do on top of that? Or is it something most mechanics will go, I'll check his catch can, empty that bit of oil out or whatever. Like you put your car in for a service and they change the fuel filter. Are they going to change the second fuel filter as well, or is it something we have to tell them?
Yeah, look, I would argue that if a mechanic opens a bonnet and sees a secondary fuel filter and a catch can on a car, how hard is it to check it? Ring the customer and say, hey, listen, mate, when was the last time you changed this secondary fuel filter? Oh, I didn't even know it had one. Or, oh, no, I don't think I've ever changed it. All right, mate, well, how about we sort of, we'll change that. Or alternatively, the customer will come in with a couple of filters and they'll go, that's for my secondary fuel filter and that's for my catch can. Can you change that while you're there? At the very, very least, drain the catch can. That's something that we always did. If we opened the bonnet and we saw that it had a catch can, make sure you drain it. Because nothing will tick a customer off more than, well, mate, did you see that it had a catch can? Oh, yeah. Did you drain it? Oh, no. Come on, guys. It's not that hard. Because not every vehicle's the same. And, they're all different and they've all got their own little quirks and things like that, all got different types of systems fitted to them. So if you see that something's like that, yes, I would argue that the mechanics should be looking for that sort of stuff, because otherwise, what are they doing?
Yeah.
I think what Buck's saying too, but Brad, like that's probably, Buck, what you're saying there is harder in a dealership because they're just, cheese cutters. It's just same. Like I've actually taken my 79 in that had all those things. Mate, they never changed that, but they just do by the book. Whereas I've felt like you get outside of that, it's like organisations that are actually doing, I don't know, a broader spectrum. They actually do look after you with that stuff. So it is challenging sometimes because, again, I'm not blaming dealerships. They just have their cookie cutter approach. But I think if you have a lot of aftermarket stuff and you're expecting a dealer to do it, I don't go down that. I don't subscribe to that. I don't mind to have a dealer doing my stuff, but I don't think that they do all that stuff because they're not dealing with that every day of the week. So if I'm going for extra mods and things, I generally go to a mechanic that I trust and have some sort of relationship because I don't know, it's a more in-depth relationship because I've actually modified the car. It's different things to what it was. So I don't expect the dealer to get on top of that personally for me.
Yeah, if we're going to add the extra stuff on, we got to go that one step further and make sure that we organise to get it done. Speaking of catch cans and secondary fuel filters, especially with a diesel, I know, Brad, they're probably not, well, are they? Just before I got the BT50, I think we were eyeing off a BT50 or a Ranger. I spoke with Alan Gray. Remember Alan Gray from Terrain Tamer, Ruthie's old mechanic? Mm-hmm. Just a wealth of knowledge, being a mechanic longer than you, Brad. Alan's bloody 80-something now, and he's still a mechanic for Terrain Tamer. And he said, if you're getting a diesel, mate, first thing you do, the first mod, is to put on a secondary fuel filter. And that is the first thing I did to the BT50. I put on the pre-filter, which is the fuel manager. That seems to be the main brand, 30 micron, which is the best to filter out, well, to catch water if there's water in your fuel. And then I think the factory filters are 5 micron there. Then I know a lot of people get catch cans put on their diesels. Brad, catch cans aren't required on petrols. You've got the petrol ram, and I know you're a big advocate for petrol engines now. You said you'd never go back to a diesel. Do you need to put, if we're going remote, a secondary fuel filter on a petrol engine?
I would go back to a diesel. I just think that, if you've got the option between petrol and diesel, like if I had the option with a 1500 to go for either a petrol or a diesel engine, I would tick the petrol, engine box every day of the week, because the diesels are just, the problem is the technology is old, and the systems that they've put on them to try and get them through emissions is substantial. Like you've got EGR systems, which petrols have anyway. You've got DPFs, diesel particulate filters.
Yeah.
They do have petrol particulate filters now as well in some cars in Europe. So, no one's escaping it. And I think as the regulations get tougher, environmental regulations get tougher, this is where they'll start to then make inroads with electric. And electric definitely has its place, but not in everything. I mean, I still don't understand how they can ever make a four-wheel drive to do, what say Tofty's doing with his van in an electric. It just doesn't make any sense.
We're a long way off there. I reckon 20 years off at least there to get
significantly. And I think if they do anything, it'll probably be some form of a hydrogen fuel cell or something like that. But once again, hydrogen is pretty difficult to transport. The infrastructure needs to be there as well. However, I digress.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah, there you go.
Brad, don't go down too many rabbit holes. He was just about to go down one then, and someone grabbed him by the tail, ripped him back.
Yeah. What was the question?
Well, second fuel filter on a petrol, yes or no? And catch can on a diesel, yes or no?
Yeah, so catch can, yes, I would advise, because one of the biggest problems that you've got with a diesel that you don't have with a petrol is that you'll always have oil entering the air intake. Okay, that's just a part of the blow-by process. You've got PCV systems, positive crankcase ventilation systems, that are going to recycle that oil-laden air that's bypassing the piston rings, and you'll always get a bit of crankcase breathing. That's got to be dealt with in a diesel, because now you've got diesel particulate, which is that black sooty particle combining with the oil in the air, and that's what coats the intake manifolds and the intake valves in the head full of that black Vegemite-like gunk that you get in a diesel that can significantly, you've only got to look at the older model Tritons. They used to have that problem. So that keeps the air intake a lot drier. So EGR on its own, so exhaust gases coming back through the air intake on its own, not a problem. Blow-by gases coming through oil-laden air on its own, not a problem. Mix the two of them together, and now you've got yourself a problem. So yes, I would definitely say yes on most diesels. Fuel filters, yeah, I think some of those systems aren't really that great, but if you're putting, say, a 30 micron filter as a pre-filter, most generic or not generic, but most genuine fuel filters will filter down to maybe 5 or something like that. So at least it'll catch the bigger particles before it gets into the main fuel filter. You got to remember too that water, if it gets into your system, water is a liquid, and the filter doesn't really know that it's fuel or water. So that's why it's always a good idea to have a glass bowl on them, on the filter.
Yeah, they do. They have one. Yeah.
Yeah. Some don't, but most
the fuel managers do.
Right. And then drain it off every now and again, just to make sure you've got no water in the system, because nothing will spoil your day more than getting 10 litres of water in a 50-litre tank fill. It'll absolutely destroy the system if it stays in there. And it's thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to replace those systems. In a petrol, not a big deal.
I've seen blokes on the side of the road on that 6-month trip I did. I was a couple of guys, and their diesel engines were stuffed. Like they were up for big money, and whether, I don't know, you get a gut full of water at a servo, good luck trying to prove that it was from that servo. Like, I think the servos are, I don't know, it happens to people all the time. You always hear of it happening. So
that's why I always say get a receipt.
Yeah, get a receipt or be able to prove that your last tank of fuel was from that thing. Hey, I want to go on to oil, Brad. can you explain to people there, when you go into Super Cheap, I type my number in 069THZ, and it tells me to use a Newline oil, 5W30, full synthetic. And that's what I use in there. You're telling me now that because the BT's got 230,000 on it, I'm towing sometimes with it, and I live in warm climate, I can probably go to a 1040 or a 540. And the book does say that, guys. So when you go into Super Cheap Auto, it tells me to use a 5W30 oil in the BT50. But when you read the book here and it tells you exactly what type of oil to use, you can use a 530, a 540, or a 1040. Brad, can just in layman's terms, mate, what's the numbers mean, please? I know the lower the number, the thinner the oil. I know that, but what's the 5 and the 30 mean?
Yeah, so this is just to go back a little bit. This is a classic what you'll find in your which side are we looking at here? This side. This is a classic indication of basically what you get when you look at the oil spec on your vehicle. This is out of our Mazda CX-5 that we've got, and you can see there that there's a temperature range. Now that temperature range is ambient, okay, so air temperature, and you can see there that vehicle can take everything from a 0W20 right the way through to a 10W30, okay? Now, the other thing that you need to look at is you need to look at the oil spec, which is over here, right? And there'll be certain numbers and letters. They all basically mean something, and it depends on, so we've got an API specification, so that's the American Petroleum Industry, and they're typically numbers like SL, SM, and SN series oils, and they're basically just generational oil numbers. Obviously, L is the older one and N is the newer one, okay? If it was a C in front of that, so if it was a CD, for instance, that means it's a diesel oil, okay? So the C denotes that it's diesel. Don't ask me why they did that, but they did. And then you'll see things like the ILSAC, and there's GF3, GF4, and GF5. Once again, just another specification. There's another specification as well, and it's an ACEA, ACEA. And
that's
it's
what's in my BT51, Brad. ACEA A5/B5, which is, it says recommended or preferred, sorry, or an A3B3. So ACEA. What's that mean, mate?
So ACEA, once again, is just a different specification. It depends on whether it's Japanese, whether it's European, whether it's American. So they're all relative, but they're easy numbers to follow. So if you can have a look and see that oil specified for your vehicle is an ACEA A3B3. Actually, I think on yours it says A5B5 is preferred, and then A3B3 is also allowable for that vehicle. And
that's correct.
Yeah, so the 3 is a lower spec than a 5. Okay, yeah. So the B basically means that it's I think it's the diesel variant. So it'll do both of those. So when you're looking at your oil container, when you're looking at the spec, viscosity is only just one thing, and that's those numbers like 5W30 or 5W40 or 0W20. The lower the number, the thinner the oil. Okay. Now, one thing that's come up a lot lately, and anyone that's sort of been online has seen, these vehicles that have been heavily modified, and some of the Toyota stuff has been having problems because they're specifying 0W20 weight oils, and they're finding that they're just too thin. Now, look, this is not my information. I'm not that smart, but the guys that do know a lot about this stuff are fellows like Matt from Just Autos, and there's another guy online, D4D Engines. He's an Australian guy. Berrima Diesel down in the Southern Highlands in New South Wales, they've been banging on about it for years, at least 5 or 6 years that I can remember. They've been talking about it, saying that 0W20 weight oils are too thin for our climate. So, those guys that do that type of thing all the time, they know these things, and I'm not overly knowledgeable in those areas. I only know what I see. So a little bit like where we get our news from, and we'll then form our own opinions about different things. So, if you've got good technical information, access to it, and let's face it, we've now got a thing called a telephone, and we've got access to every piece of information that mankind has ever known. We can look it up. And sorry, I just got distracted. So have a look at the specification that it lists. Now, one thing that I would argue, and we've had this conversation before, is that the websites that they've got for Valvoline, Castrol, Newlon, Hi-Tech, Penrite, all of those big oil companies have all got a registration number lookup feature, right? So ABC123, New South Wales Rego. Okay, it tells you that it's a 1987 model Ford Falcon or whatever, and this is the oil that's recommended for that car. One thing that they used to do, they used to put a good, better, best thing in there. All right. So one thing that I've noticed a little bit lately is that a lot of them are taking out that good, better, best and just leaving the best behind.
Yeah.
So in some instances, it's better to go to your manual, have a look and see what the viscosity range is allowable for it. Like I said to you, you were using 5W30s full synthetic.
Yeah.
Your engine actually doesn't require a full synthetic. The specification is actually a semi-synthetic oil for your engine, right? So the difference between the Ford Ranger and the BT50, they take a different oil. And the reason they take a different oil, that's exactly the same engine, is because of the change interval. So Ranger runs a 15,000. So we got on PX3s now, right? So the old 3.2 series. So they run a 15,000 kilometer interval, whereas the BT50 runs a 10. So they use a different oil. Okay. So if you were going to change your older model Ranger, for instance, if you were going to change it every 7,500 kilometers, which a lot of people like to do, and that's fair enough, especially if you're driving them mostly around town, then you could use the oil that's specified for the BT50 without a problem in the world. And I would argue if it's got any more than 150,000 kilometers on it, you'd probably go from a 5W30, which is what's recommended in those lookup tables, to a 10W40 for those reasons, because the engine's a bit older, there's a little bit more wear there, there's a little bit more clearance between the main and the big end journals, and it's handy to have a little bit of a thicker oil in there. Hence the reasons why the guys that are specialising, for instance, in the 300 series Land Cruisers, are specifying a 5W40 oil as a specification, is because they've pulled these engines apart and they've seen what's happening. And the other thing you got to remember too is that oil quantity is absolutely vital. So a lot of people think we've had cars come into the workshop numerous times that we've ridden, because the boys always check the oil level before they do a service, right? It's always done. And so we can then write on the job card and say, engine oil level was low before draining. Okay. It got to that point where it was almost worth putting a stamp on it rather than the boys writing it. So it was that common. So we would have all of those notes listed on the docket. So we could go back through the 3 or 4 last services, and every single time engine oil level was low before draining. But do you think we could get customers to check their oil level? No. And the problem is that low oil volume has a significant factor in engine cooling as well, because you've got to remember that engine oil doesn't just lubricate, it cools and cleans as well.
Yeah,
and especially in the 300 series. And once again, Matt details this on his videos very, very well. They've got steel pistons in them now, and the skirt size is significantly decreased. They've got a skirt size of about that, whereas the old, the V8 had a skirt about that high, about that long, and you don't get as much heat transfer between the piston and the cylinder wall. So now oil becomes really important to go up into the piston to try and cool the crown of that piston down on the outside of it. So absolutely vital that you get those numbers right. But sometimes,
what are they again, Brad? The 10 and the 40. What I'm still confused as to what's the 10 and what's the 40. Is 10 when it's cold, 40s when it's heated up or something?
Yeah.
Or?
So it'll be 10W. So 10 for winter, 40. So in other words, it acts like a 10 weight oil when it's cold and more like a 40 weight oil. So remember the old days where we'd run stationary engines and we'd only have a mono grade oil in them, like a 30 weight oil. So they would be mono grade. And then they had multi-grade engine oils. And multi-grade engine oil is a 10W30. It's multiple grade. So it just acts chemically different. So it's important that you look at all of those numbers, but don't necessarily just go off what is recommended in those lube guides that you jump online and have a look at.
And it says so in your maintenance manual, guys, in your thing. So I go into Super Cheap or Repco, they say 5W30, but the book clearly states that I can use a 1040. And Brad said, because your engine's getting older, you're in hot climate and you're towing, you should be using a 1040. And that's what I'm going to do next oil change. The other thing I like to do every now and then, Brad, is that in Super Cheap, I think it gets all the gunk out from me. It's like you add it to your oil before you change your oil, run your engine for 15 minutes, and then drain your oil. Does that help get any oil that's stuck on there that doesn't drain out? It kind of cleans your engine better before you change the old oil. Do you recommend using that?
Well, personally, no. I'd heard of some experiences years ago where people had used that. Look, it had missed an oil change, so I'm going to put a bottle of this oil system cleaner in it. And 1,000 kilometres after the oil change, the engine failed, because what it did, it softened up the gunk that was left behind that was normally going to stay there. A little bit like, I guess, if you eat fatty food all your life and your arteries are clogged up with cholesterol. If you took a tablet that automatically dissolved that, what's going to happen? It's going to go to your heart and go to your brain and cause a stroke or a heart attack. So, yeah, I personally never use them. I never advocated using them. I would say if you're draining your oil on a regular basis, the oil is good enough. And the same then goes for additive packages. You know, you can buy a can of I don't know, oil enhancer or whatever. Your oil has already got everything in it that it needs.
Yeah.
So, you know, the chemists have done a really good job in doing that. And then some guy comes along with a can of ABC oil treatment, dumps it into the engine and changes the whole thing. So, no, I wouldn't recommend using them. I've seen too many situations where they've gone wrong big time. So, no, I wouldn't use them.
Hey, Tofty, you've just got a brand new 300 series. Did you get a catch can put on and a secondary fuel filter?
No, not yet. No, so I haven't. So what I'm doing, and I did this with my last 300 was a 21 model. Did 122,000 kilometers before it's still at zone, but obviously I changed over. I do oil sampling every 5,000 to 10,000 kilometers, depending what I'm doing with Just Autos, because obviously they've been developing and working on these motors to make them, obviously better. And when you enhance something or get more out of the thing, you know. So currently we're working on a bigger sump and all sorts of things I can't say, but like it's incredible the difference it's made by oil sampling and seeing how that oil, and obviously I've run the right oil, not just running the standard stuff for ages, because again, I've got a bigger exhaust, I've got a bigger air intake, I've got a bigger intercooler in mine and that as well, so I don't get the heat soak that some of them have. But like I say, I did the first probably 80,000 Ks in that car, pretty standard as far as the engine and everything. And I didn't put all the extra. In my 79, I did everything. And this one I chose, let's just see what it does. Mate, never had a problem. Never had an issue. never burnt any oil. And I read a lot of those forums and stuff, and I generally find a lot of those people don't have a 300. I think there's been a few failures. I think they're pretty minimal for the numbers of vehicles that are in there. I sort of see that people doing it to Rangers or whatever. Generally, I find a lot of people who make those comments don't have one. And I've never had that sort of stuff. But again, I do change my air cleaners, say, every 20,000 Ks at the max, sometimes 10,000. So just to give you a sample, when I went to Cape York, I put 3 air cleaners in that car.
Yeah.
Because air cleaners to me are cheap. I change my cabin filter every 10,000 because I'm always in rough conditions.
That's one everyone forgets to change because it's in under the glove box. I know mechanics never change them. They never change them. And
not all mechanics. This guy does, but I get that.
He's a perfectionist. I've seen him in action. But guys, if you have not checked your cabin filter in your vehicle, in your 4-wheel drive, it'll be in under the glove box there, Brad, and it'll probably be putrid, and that can affect how well your air conditioner works as well.
You guys would have seen it, like somebody, and again, I don't know these people at all, and I feel sorry for them, but people modify cars heavily. I've got one myself. They go out, they have dramas, and then it's sort of like, Toyota or someone, whoever did the mods, whatever, should fix it. Well, I'm sort of different with that stuff. Like, I think if you go outside the parameters and you modify, and it's a bit like our caravans, if someone comes to me and says, mate, I put an extra 200-litre water tank, I did this, this, and this, it's very hard to always give warranty where someone's gone beyond your parameters, because I know I work, and Brad's been with me when I've actually talked to our engineering team. They do all the calculations. They do things. We build our vans. Say this van here that I'm in is 4.5 ton, but it's built for over 5 ton, right? So you've got capacity that can handle it. Toyota are probably one of the bigger companies that actually underrate their vehicles, obviously for less warranties and things, hence why they don't give massive warranties. They don't need to. But I think one of the key problems, I remember a few years ago, I had people saying, we're doing these brakes, they're failing in 300s and all this sort of stuff. Brad saw mine at 120,000 Ks, never had a problem. I think it comes down to where you've been, what you're doing, how you maintain things, but also how you treat cars. Like Brad could see by not even watching me drive, he goes, mate, you must be good with your trailer brakes, which I do. I always adjust them. I drive in manual mode too, so I've got a full 10-speed auto. I never leave it in auto. I drive it in manual towing because I use it like a normal diesel. If I'm going down hills, I'm using the engine braking, not the bloody brakes.
Yes.
Now, I'm full disc brakes on my trailers. I haven't had normal brakes, drum brakes for years because they are better. You don't see the latest motorbikes at Ducati, or you don't see Ferraris in Formula One out there with bloody drum brakes. Drum brakes are fine. They'll still do the job. I actually think they take more maintenance, but they're a little bit more expensive. So again, everybody's should be free to pick whatever they want. But I choose disc brakes because they're just easier for me when I'm traveling. But getting back to motors and mods, my car, we chopped it. It's a 4.4. So the car now it can GBM is 4495, plus I can tow a genuine 4.5 ton. But to do that, I had to change the whole rear diff. I've changed the whole back of the car. It's got a far heavier, upgraded chassis. Motor mods, I haven't done stupid stuff, but it's got some stuff that Just Autos are working with us. But all that stuff, and mine's on 35s, and it's legal anywhere in Australia to run that. Now, it costs a lot to do that, don't get me wrong. And if I wasn't involved with Sonar RV and working with these organisations, now we paid the full price. We didn't get any favours from people. But what I would say is if I'm driving in Toyota now and expecting the normal mechanic to even put my car on his hoist, where it's already heavier, longer, I don't have those expectations. I do expect them if my air conditioning fails, if things in the motor failed from just normal stuff. But I would expect them to come back and go, hey, mate, well, you're going beyond what we first designed it for. Yeah. That's fair enough. I get that. But I think that's where sometimes it's hard. But if you look at my build, I don't have a massive canopy on the back. I don't, because I already tow a van. Even my van here is 4.5 ton capacity. I think I'm sitting here at about 3,950. So we don't just take stuff for the hell of it. Like, we're conscious fuel. I'm averaging my whole year. We're less than 23 litres per 100 Ks. Now that's including all the stuff we've done in Cape York for 9 weeks, across the centre, heaps of dirt roads, heaps of times I'm running all my tyres down at 18 to 25 PSI. We don't sit on 140, you know, but we're definitely doing 100 or 100. Brad will vouch for that. I don't muck around. But I think we just got to all be a bit realistic. If you're in these modified situations, then, you know, either you've got the budget to, you know, put that into it. So I'm regularly changing my oils, but I really like working with organizations. Like I say, I'm down here in Melbourne. I got the guys to send back some oil, and they oil sample my stuff anywhere I are in Australia. And that's why I like Matt and those guys from Just Autos. They're not just slapping it in, doing a bit of a tune. Good luck, mate. Hope it works for you. Mate, he's like you guys. I could ring him 8 o'clock at night. I'm having a drama. What do I need to do, mate? Boom. He can log into my car. Even my computer tonight, one of my guys at work, I had to call 20 minutes before the show. Dude, I don't know what I've done. Can you fix it? He goes, you're a meathead, Toft. No worries. Boom. Up she goes. So you just got to have people you can rely on, I think. But also, I'm doing that build because, one, I got to be obviously legal, safe, and definitely it enhances. Like Elisa and I, you know, can tell you firsthand, the suspension, the way that car handles is so much better. But, mate, I'm passing people every day in the high country, towing more than I am with cars that definitely aren't legal.
Saw it all the time, mate. Blokes in a standard dual cab, no GVM upgrade, massive.
No, but that worries me more. Or I see more so than that, people driving at extreme heats and doing crazy stuff, and then they don't service it. And I'm just one of those people, because I've loved machinery. I grew up in a family that we had machinery all our life. I actually feel sorry for the machinery. It's almost like an animal, I think, and like, it doesn't deserve you, buddy. Like, you're just treating it like a piece of dirt. And Matt's really good, and the guys that I've worked with, see, they can log into my car and he can ring me and go, hey, I noticed you did a big hill climb the other day, you know, blah, blah, blah. This got to this. That's why it's good people run scan gauges and things, so you can keep an eye on temperatures and things. But more importantly, your fluids, you know, your maintenance, your wheels, your tire pressures. I think something people forget all the time.
Pressures is a big one, yeah.
Even in your vans, you know, like, people either when they're on main roads underinflate them, or they, you know, overinflate them for off-road conditions. So there's a lot of learnings with all that. And we try and log a lot of stuff so we can, you know, with the amount of Ks we do and the different vans we have, it's really important to log all that stuff so you actually have data. And I would say, you know, Hooker may or may not be listening tonight, but Hooker's one of the people that's really good at that. I love digital data, and Hooker is a guru on digital data. And if you can harness a bit of that in anything you do and have some proper data, you're not just, oh, I think this happens, that happens. You actually know. And that's where I never get on 300 forums, but if I was, I would just say to people, my experience, haven't seen any of that stuff. But, you know, I don't not believe it doesn't happen, but I question a little bit sometimes, what are people doing or how they treat it. And, you know, I've been with you, Buck. I've traveled. You know, you've got an older BT50, but you're not out there trying to kill it like a bloody young fella with a, you know, P-plater out there going hard. You know, I think that's the key.
They cost too much. Hey, are you sure 35's illegal on a 300? Because you only go 25 mil bigger on your tyres in Queensland.
Yeah, so again, mine isn't a 300, guys. So that's where we just have to be really clear here. If you Google if I gave you my number tonight, my rego, my car is no longer a 300 series. So my car is an AEV dual cab. So there's only a couple of people. There's 2 cars like mine in Australia that are done to that level. They absolutely are legal. I've been through all that, and it costs a lot to do that. I could have went and had a chop anywhere else, would have been heaps cheaper, but I chose not to. And I think like we've got that opportunity to pave the way a bit to help these organisations. And again, I didn't want any free things, so I'm not out there trying to promote them or whatever. But what I am doing is I'll be able to say after 100,000 Ks, this has been my experience. This is so my car was cut in Townsville, and the guy's ex-military. And mate, I'm telling you, he's not doing stuff just for the hell of it. It has to be right. So we got all that federally approved and stuff. So you can, but obviously to do that, you have to change the diff. Mine has a complete different front diff drop in it to make all that work legally. I don't run through. I don't actually really care the size tires, but that's what I've. It's all legal with the brakes and everything. Been through all the proper testing, and I've seen how they've done that. It's incredible what they do.
I saw another mob that chopped the 300 in half and whatever, and the engine's just blowing up on them. They went to Toyota, and Toyota went. Just Autos has taken over the warranty, mate, on your
so Just Autos and that will have a situation there. What they're working towards is, if as long as you do the things the right way, then that's what they'll do. I think they're really good because they've actually got a couple, and they've actually even got 300 engines. They're testing all the time. Again, I don't want to make it a Just Autos thing. It's just more, that's actually a reputable company that I rate that actually are doing stuff, and I've actually seen it with my eyes. I'm sure there's other people. You talked about Berrima Diesel. They're a good organisation. There's plenty of good people that do stuff. I just, like with my chop and stuff, was really because of this product. People like us are living full-time on the road. Brad's got a 1500. We've got a 2500 at work. But more so, I don't think it's actually about cars. It's, again, serviceability. Because I go remote, Toyota still has the best service around Australia as far as remote places because that's their product. Now, Ram and everyone else will get there eventually, but Toyota's had that big legacy of that. So only purely the reason I did what I did because I wanted to stay with Toyota. I could have still done a Tundra, had a petrol and a hybrid. I just chose at this point, I think this is the best package for what we're doing. And I think our customers who would buy this product, that's, and that it's not for everybody, let me tell you. Personally, it's just easy to walk down, pick a car up and see you later. Trust me. But I think it definitely enhances what you're doing. We've got a 600 mil extension. It's just a single piece rear tail shaft. It's done really well. J-Max did all the suspension and the rear diff. Heaps bigger than standard. Massive, like great setup. But again, he's got dealers and serviceability. I did a Boss aluminium canopy. I haven't got a canopy. I've just got their tray, but they're here in Melbourne. I went and saw them 3 days ago. Mate, you could eat off the floor in that factory. It is unbelievable. Now, I could have went and just threw a Toyota one on the back, but I'm just passionate about Australian manufacturing where I can. I can't do it all. But I think there are people who want that. Now, I couldn't care if you're out there driving a Suzuki Sierra, or a bloody shopping trolley. I'm just happy you're out camping with us. And I think that's more important. But where I'm going with it all is there's the highs and lows of all that stuff. But warranties, I think, working with an organisation that often deals with all this, it's challenging when people change anything. You've got to question what's happened. But I think it's a good challenge.
Brad, where's the line in the sand when it comes to modifications, mate? You buy a new 4-wheel drive, we put a snorkel on it. Are they going to wipe their hand? Like there's got to be a line in the sand where with what modifications. I know you get a 4-wheel drive, we can put a bull bar on it as long as we don't overload the front axle. We're still within the limits. We haven't gone over GVM and all that type of stuff. It's a bloody grey area, mate, with what you can do to your 4-wheel drive before you void your warranty. And I know a lot of people try and keep their 4-wheel drive stock now until they're out of warranty. But the trouble is now, some warranties are 5, 7, Mitsubishi 10-year warranties. So it's a tricky one. What's your experience with where the line in the sand is? Like, I know it's a big subject, but put a snorkel on a vehicle. Is that enough to void your warranty?
Oh, look, I think it all comes back down to the individual, like the individual dealer, the amount that they want to help their customer out. I think a lot of times you'd struggle to explain to someone that, because they put a snorkel on their car, it's burnt the driver's side window regulator out. I mean, that I've seen that literally, not that same thing, but that sounds stupid, but I've actually seen that before. People will say, oh, you didn't have your coolant changed at the last service, so therefore the right-hand rear wheel bearing is not covered because you didn't do the service as per the schedule. What difference does it make? And the answer is it doesn't make an ounce of difference if you didn't change the coolant at the last service. It's got no bearing on the fact that the right rear wheel bearing failed. I've seen that happen before, and it's stupid. And unfortunately, we have more consumer rights if we buy that from Officeworks than what we do from buying a $130,000 Land Cruiser from Toyota or a $100,000 Ranger from Ford or any other manufacturer. And I think that they'll do whatever they possibly can to get out of a warranty claim, where I think what they should be doing is they should be looking after their customers, because if you had a good customer experience with a particular manufacturer, would you buy from them again?
Yeah.
The answer would be yes. Of course you would. If you had a bad customer experience from a manufacturer, chances are you're not going to buy from them again. And that might be the way that it is. Someone buys a Ford this time and they buy a Mitsubishi next time. But I'd like to think that most people out there, when they get good customer service and they get looked after, then they go back there because the company look after them. It's like all the reasons why you go and buy a Zone RV. You're going to get looked after. You're getting a quality product that is going to last the distance and do the job because it's been well engineered. And yes, I understand that all of that costs money, but there's a reason that people go back and buy them multiple times.
Yeah,
is because of the way that
it's different markets too. Like honestly, Jayco would have the best service agency probably in Australia around the country. And that's not discrediting anyone, but just I know myself, like all my travels, there's a Jayco dealer everywhere I go, and they generally are pretty good at that. But I mean, price point, it's a very different thing. So I think it's a bit like what we're saying with servicing. If you're going somewhere that's ultra cheap or whatever, it's generally not always the case that, you pay less, you get less, but in some cases it is. And I think you've just, that's what's great about forums and catch-ups like this is, ask a few people. I ask Brad a lot about mechanical side, even though, I'm in the industry of building things and stuff, but it's just very different. And it's really good to get a group of people to, I think Ty wrote on his, he started his channel to actually show some of this stuff, and it is good. Buck, you did, the Starlink Mini. Now, I had a Starlink Generation 3. I had a 2 before, but that Mini I've got now is so much better than all those, like personally.
They're a good little bit of kit. Hey, Tofty, just quickly, K-Train, I'm not sure what your first name is, from Minnesota. He's a new person that's just joined the community. So we've got Mike Blakely in Colorado on, and Kate from Minnesota, 3:50 in the morning up there in Minnesota. Should be getting cold up there at the moment. Minnesota's up near the Canadian border. So welcome, mate. Welcome. And it's good to see you there, mate. Really good to have another Yank on the channel and following along. Appreciate you getting up at Sparrowfart. If that doesn't mean anything to you Americans, Sparrowfart is like very early in the morning.
Crack of dawn. Yeah,
the crack of dawn. So welcome, mate. And I've seen a few of your comments recently, and it's great to have you on board. Good stuff.
Kevin's his name.
What's that? Kevin. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Kev. Thanks for being on, mate. And it's great to have you on board. So I'll remember that from now on. Yeah. Not the
Kevin, it's good that he said that, but he won't remember. You'll get to know this.
It'll be Squirrel. What was his name? K-Train. No, Kev.
He'll you out in about 3 weeks' time. G'day, Kevin. We got Kevin on from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Bedtime
Hey, if
round.
anyone's got any last questions of Brad or Tofty, guys, it's coming up to 2 hours. I don't want to go too much thing. Roz has just got home too, so I'll get out of here. And
just one thing there, Buck, if I can. Delta Bravo Gaming just made the comment that dealers are knocking back secondary fuel filters and catch cans even. Depends on the integrity of the dealer. Yeah, absolutely it does. And I've seen them knock back things like catch cans and extra fuel filters for stupid things that have got nothing to do with you know, I don't know, a fan belt coming off or something stupid like, oh, you've got a catch can fitted. That voids the warranty.
My thing is, like, I know I've got a secondary fuel filter in, and it kind of makes sense to me as a non-mechanical mind, but I'm just like, in the back of my mind, it's like, if the engineers that designed the vehicles wanted us to have thought it needed a catch can, surely they would have put one on in the factory. That's always one of the questions I've got on the thing. I know there's arguments for catch cans are fantastic for this and all this to stop your engine from sooting up, but why don't they put one on in the bloody factory, Brad?
Well, see, you've got engineers and you've got accountants, and they're constantly fighting with each other. Because if the accountant had to pay for everything the engineer wanted, the car would now be 200,000, not 100,000.
But
so I guess it's a balancing act between what most people are going to use that for. Let's face it, you know, you go to because we've been talking about Land Cruisers. Let's go with Land Cruisers. Sorry.
Oh, just saying goodnight to Lorna.
Yeah. So Land Cruisers, they would probably, most of them would never tow anything, maybe a box trailer on a weekend or something like that. But chances are most of them would never see a dirt track. People buy them because they've got, I don't know, can you buy them in a 7-seater still? I don't even know.
In
the Land Cruiser
300? Yeah, I think so, mate.
Yeah. Only the base model 300's got 5, and then the rest of the models have got 7, I think.
Oh, well, there you go. So I don't really know that much about them, but you know, most of those vehicles that are being sold will probably never see a dirt road.
There you go, Brad. What about?
Have you ever worked on Ineos Grenadier, Brad?
Never, mate. No,
I saw
not too many of those kicking around Maitland.
I saw a few of them over in Perth when I was there. They're a nice looking 4B. They remind me of a like a fancy Land Rover, but the Ineos Grenadier, they've got a 3-litre turbo diesel BMW engine in them. They are a nice looking 4-wheel drive. Ronnie Dahl had a lot of good things to say about his Ineos Grenadier, but I'll tell you what, they're out of my price range, let me tell you.
Wait and see what happens with the Chinese cars in the next 5 to 10 years. They will be as big a threat to the Japanese and the Koreans as what the Koreans were to the Japanese about 10, 15 years ago.
I've been watching a lot of YouTube stuff the last couple of days on the BYD Shark 6, and it's a hybrid thing. And I'll tell you what, for on-road and around town or driving to Cairns and back or going camping, those things are going to put Ranger and all those people, they're going to do a lot of damage to Ford, Mitsubishi, and Toyota Hiluxes and that. They don't have a proper low range and rear diff locker or anything in them. They're not really for off-roading, but for a camping dual cab and for whizzing around or for tradies and that, got all the bells and whistles that you would see, all the high-tech stuff, massive screens and all that in there, coming into Australia at under 60 grand. And they're bigger than a Ford Ranger with more high-tech stuff, but they're not kitted out for solid off-roading. I wouldn't take them off-road. They're shit for that. But tell you what, impressive vehicle inside in that, mate. For under 60,000, they're going to scoop up a lot of the market. They really are. BYD Shark, guys. Go and have a look at those on YouTube. BYD Shark, they're starting to do a lot of testing, you know, the Car Expert and all those channels and that. Unbelievable. So, so what, guys, about tyre life? Here we go. G'day, guys. What about tyre life? I've heard that is a legal age that tyres are not allowed to be. Yes, there is on a tyre I remember once in the army, we had to inspect all our Unimog tyres, and if they were over a certain like been sitting on the shelf for over 10 years, we had to send them back to depot so they could be disposed of. There is a life on tyres, Brad, and it's stamped on there somewhere. Tyres have only got a certain, even if they've been sitting in the bloody shed and all that type of stuff, because they can still, I don't know, over time, they just, it affects the integrity of the tyre, is what I'm trying to say. That's a good question, Craig.
Yeah, so when you have a look at a tyre, if you have a look around the circumference of the tyre, it'll generally be toward the bead. So like the rim side of it, there will be a number, something like, say, for instance, 3522. Okay, so that means that tyre was produced in the 35th week, I should say, of 2022, right? So if it was 5121, it would be the 51st week of 2021. Now, there is no requirement.
I thought you said the 35th month. I was thinking.
I did to start with. I corrected myself.
I saw Tom had a stunned mullet look on his face, and I was going, did he say the 35th month? I'm thinking, I'm sure there's only 12 months to a year. You diddly dog, Hal.
I did say it, and I corrected myself, but you've got. I'm flying on cold flu tablets, guys, so you'll have to excuse me. But there is no requirement, as far as I know, and during registration inspections, there is no requirement to look at tyre age. It's fairly well spoken about a lot of times. It shouldn't be any older than 10 years. What the biggest problem that you've got with tyres is that they age through exposure to oxygen, basically. So that's why you'll always see tyres generally wrapped up. So they're trying to keep oxygen away from them where they can, and sunlight as well. Keep them in a cool, dark place.
Yeah.
So
sunlight's especially your spare tyre. If your spare tyre's been out in the sun without a cover on it for years, that may well be worth checking out, because sun will deteriorate a tyre. But I remember Craig, you're right, mate. I remember in the army, we had to check the dates on our Unimog tyres that were in store. And if they were over a certain amount of years old, we had to return them to depot, because they believed that they were more prone to having a blowout. Even if they were still brand new, we had to return them. So there is something to do with that there. I know. And that's exactly right, John. Remember everyone, Jap crap, Brad, back in the day? Jap crap. Wouldn't buy anything Jap crap. Now Japanese, anything made in Japan is deemed the duck's guts, Toyota Land Cruisers. Here we go, but we're saying that about Chinese cars now. Chinese car, I'd never buy one of them. But I'll tell you what, go and have a look at the reviews on the BYD Shark. I'll tell you what, the Chinese are becoming a threat in the car market. They really, really are. And they're getting better and better and better very quickly. And I'll tell you what, Ford and Mitsubishi and Toyota Hilux, they better lift their game or they're going to get left behind, because the price is a big thing. If you can bang for your buck, that thing's got a lot of stuff on it for under 60,000. So, yeah. Anyway, anything I've forgotten? Anything you want to bring up, Tofty and Brad, before we head off, mate? Oh, no, there's a million other things we could probably talk about.
I'm enjoying that Phil's trying to get Gidgey to fix his internet at home there in the background. Him and the Gidge are going, sorting it out. So that's a community development I've seen. How
don't get Gidgey to try and help you fix his computer just because he works for the NBN. That don't mean nothing, mate. He knows nothing about computers. Gidgey's asking.
Yeah, he's into it.
The Raptor is still bringing out the KO2s. I'm not a fan of the KO2 tyres, the BF Goodrich KO2s. They are shocking on wet roads. They are shite in the wet. And I told the BF Goodrich bloke that at the Perth Four-Wheel Drive show. They had the KO3s. And I said, mate, they don't look that much different to a KO2. And I'll tell you now, the KO2s, I've had 2 sets of them. They're shit in the wet. And you know what he said? He said, I agree with you, mate. The KOs, off-road, great all-terrain off-road. but on and in the dry, but they still put them on the Raptors. I'm not sure what Ty's got on. So what do you
Tyres are a balancing act. Tyres are a balancing act between grip, so they need to be soft enough that they give you good grip, and they also need to provide enough wear resistance as well. So, it's a really hard thing. And Ty mentioned a question there before about different tyre manufacturers. He was a huge BF fan, but with manufacturing moved away from the US, they turned to shit. I've never really put BFs on my car much at all. I've used Nexons and all that sort of stuff before, and always had a fairly good run out of them. But I had a Mitsubishi Triton there a few years ago, and it had Mickey Thompson's on it when I bought it, and that they were so hard, those tyres. Yeah, like the Coopers, last for 100,000 kilometres, but the trade-off is grip, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially when it gets wet, mate. You want something that's a bit softer and going to grip. Tofty, what do you got on the 300? Did you upgrade the tyres on the new 300?
Yeah, or? I've got Toyo Open Country. I think they're RTs. Yeah, they've been nice. But again, only done 5,000 or 6,000 Ks. I haven't done nothing. But I had before that Mickey Thompson Barger or something. I don't know. Tyres are one of those things, aren't they? That I've had BFs before. Like Brad said, I think Maxis are good. Like Ty had there, those I see them a lot. Those Falcon, is it Falcon?
Falcon Wild Peaks, Chrissy Anderson.
Rating anywhere I've been, people talk very highly about them. I don't know much about them myself, but to me, like they seem a pretty good tyre. Like I see a lot of people with them, so obviously they've been good for those people.
I've got Goodyear Duratrax, good in the wet. That's good to hit, Grant. Those Falcon Wild Peaks. I've seen a lot of really, really good comments about them, and I'll tell you what, I'm tempted to put them on the BT when my KM2 muddies wear out that I had in the shed as my alternate things. But I'm still running the KM muddies there. They're still going all right. But Falcon Wild Peaks, well, there you go. Marky Lavell's got Fallen Wild Peaks. I think you mean Falcon Wild Peaks, Mark. You happy with them, mate? Are you happy with those?
He said they're falling.
BF Goodrich getting made outside of. I always went with BF Goodrich because they're like, the two best manufacturer of tyres, the Yanks and the Japs. You know what I mean? But it sounds like BF Goodrich. Give it time. Trumpy will bloody get up them for not building them in America soon. They'll be back in America. So.
You've brought a smile to Brad's eyes now. You just mentioned Trumpy.
No, I'm actually I'm smiling at a mate of mine. Sharpie's watching the feed over there in Largs, and he's asked me if I've got pants on, and yes, I have. They're actually Gidgee gorilla shorts, actually.
Oh, good stuff. So, I'll tell you what Gidgee called you before, Brad, with your black on. He called you the Black Wiggle.
The Black Wiggle.
We got the purple wiggle. What is it? The yellow, the red, and the blue, and you're the fifth wiggle. You're the Black Wiggle. You stand beside Captain Feathersword.
When I'm talking to you one day, not on here, ask me about the purple wiggle.
Wake up, Jeff.
Yeah, I got a story for you. It was hilarious. Yeah.
Oh dear.
There's a lot of people there tonight saying wake up. They're trying to. Where's Slacken? Slacken was the best to watch that day. We did the 24-hour, the 12-hour live feed. Slacken looked like he needed needles.
Slacken was in the hurt locker around the 12-hour mark. He was getting the toothpicks and matchsticks to keep his eyes open. They looked like piss holes in the snow. It was about 2:30 in the morning Toronto time, and he was struggling. Snork uses Nitto grapplers. Yeah, there's a lot of good tyres out there, and you always everyone, but I don't rate the KO2s in the wet. When I came down there, I was going through Newcastle, Brad, and I went to take off uphill with a van, and they weren't bald. They were still in good condition and just spinning, mate, with the van. Roz looked at me. I said, these KO2s are shit in the wet, and they are bloody terrible. They really are.
I had that experience with those Mickey Thompsons that were on my ML Triton. So it's a 3.2 litre turbo diesel.
Yeah.
And whenever it was wet, I would always have to engage four-wheel drive, and it had the Super Select thing on it. It was a really good system. That Mitsubishi Triton had a really good transfer case in it. And I would have to do that. Otherwise, just accelerating as lightly as you can, I defy anyone not to make the wheels spin in the wet. They were that hard.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to change them out because the amount of times that you'd go around a corner at a reasonable, like a normal speed in the wet, and lose the tail of it was just ridiculous. And I thought, no, I can't handle this anymore.
Well, there you go. I've had so many people go on about the Wild Peak, Falcon Wild Peaks. Mark's got them on him, game changers. There you go. So say no more.
They're the things that you've got to research too. I mean, you buy a set of tyres for a car and you can spend $1,000 now on a 4-wheel drive really easily on good tyres. And absolutely. It's no use, 4 weeks into it, if you find out that they're absolute rubbish, because now you've got to put up with them for potentially another 50, 60,000 K.
And another recommendation from me, if you're going to see someone's review about a tyre, you probably could go for a lot of other things, tyres on YouTube. Watch blokes who do a review that have paid full money for them and have paid for them themselves. Don't get these guys who get BF Goodrich have given them a set of tyres and next thing they're the best tyre in the world. Get on to some bloke who's bloody paid full price for them. He's done 20,000 on them and he gives you an honest opinion. They're the guys to keep an eye out for. Mickey Thompson's are a hard tyre, was saying. So
that was my experience.
I think the Falcon Wild Peaks, I've heard so many good things. They could be the next tyre appearing on the BT50. So anyway, fellas, we might call it up there. We've just gone over 2 hours 10. Bloody, it's probably midnight down in Mexico there, Tofty. Must be midnight down there by now, is it?
The sun just went down, actually.
I hate that daylight savings down south. I can't get used to it. It's like the sun's still up and it's like it's time to go to bed, but the friggin' sun's just gone down. I know it's only an hour, but it just throws me out of whack. I suppose you just get used to it, Brad, down there. It's the thing. But,
we love daylight saving down here.
Brad calls it sunset drinks time.
Were you being sarcastic then, Brad, or?
No, I'm serious. No, I love it. Yeah, look, there are some people that don't, but I love it because you can come home from work when I was working, and you've still got a couple of hours of daylight. So when we were younger in the summer, we'd come home from work at 5 o'clock, hook the boat up, go down the river, get a couple of hours skiing in or goofing about, and then come home. It was really good.
And go out and mow the lawn at 9 o'clock at night. They trialled it once back in the 70s in Queensland and everyone went, never again. But I know Brisbane and the Gold Coast, down in Sunshine Coast probably want it, but North Queensland and West Queensland certainly do not want it. Anyway, thanks for coming on.
No, I was going to say, like in the western part of the state where the time zone is still the same, the sun doesn't set until, probably in Western Queensland until, 8:30 anyway.
Out Broken Hill and out West.
Right.
Wales, absolutely, mate, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for coming on, fellas. Before I go, I just want to say tomorrow night, and I saw him on here. I don't know if he's still on. Rob the Wanderer, guys. The Wanderer Oz is having his Christmas live feed tomorrow night, Sunday night. So get on. I think Rob might even have a couple of prizes to give away. I'm not quite sure. Haven't seen Rob for a while. He's been busy at work. But tomorrow night, I'm not sure. It'll be Queensland time because he's in Brisbane. Get onto the Wanderer Oz. I'll put it so if you're new to the thing.
Hello, he's typing. Can't type and talk.
Type with my elbows. I'm quicker. The Wanderer Oz, everyone. Rob's having his Christmas thing tomorrow night. So get on. And tomorrow night, I'll be able to get in the chat room and have a chat with you. And Rob will be taking the helm and doing a live feed tomorrow night. So, and then we've got another good one coming up on the night of the 16th, everyone. Pete and Cam from West Aussie. Cam Wild Touring and Pete from WA Camping Adventures. We're going to do a live feed with those two diddly donks over in the West. That'll be an absolute beauty. That conversation's all going to be about camping, four-wheel driving, fishing, swags. It's going to have a real camp theme. Tonight was more of a mechanical and a vehicle type thing, caravans. Thanks for your input tonight, fellas. Really good to tap into. You know, I know there's a lot of other subjects we could have talked about. We'd be here all night saying that. Yeah, Brad.
If I could just give a plug also, Camping with Mates, we've got a live feed on the 11th of December at 7:30 New South Wales time.
Yes.
There's a live feed coming up there. So if you can get on and join in, please do so. It'll be fun.
We've got, and they're all in here, Marky Lavelle, Roachy, Wixie, Brad. Who have I forgotten, Brad?
Landy Smith.
Landy Smith.
Landy Smith.
Yeah. So they're running the camping thing next year. So on the 11th, the night of the 11th, what time is it, Brad? Your time down south?
7:30. 7:30 our time, 6:30 Queensland time.
6:30 Queensland time, 4:30 over West Central time. I have no idea. USA
half an hour changed to
us. Whatever that'll be, 17 hours before for you, Mike Blakely, there in Colorado. So yeah, get on tonight, tomorrow night. Rob the Wanderer Oz, the 11th. The 11th it was, Brad. The camp with mates, and then the 16th with Pete and Cam.
Marky's just saying it's 7 p.m.
Oh, 7 o'clock. All right, so we'll see you there. So tomorrow night, guys, for Rob the Wanderer, the 11th with Camping with Mates. You're all going to be on, Brad, all 5 of yous?
As far as I know.
Yep. Good stuff. And really looking forward to that. Me and Roz are booked in now, September next year, down in the Newcastle, Hunter Valley. I'm passionate. I've got to go back and do the Memorial Walk, mate. The Memorial Walk again. And I want to do Fort Scratchley. I really want to go through Fort Scratchley. So, Ken,
we took Tofty and Elisa down there when we were up. It was a bit of a shitty day, but we had whales just off the coast, didn't we, Tofty?
Yeah, look, Buck's taking a couple of calls from some of his other friends. What I like about the Mr. Buckaroony events is check him out. He's found out he's got the wrong dates.
No, he changed it apparently. It was tomorrow because I had it written in my calendar. I had
Buck hates change. Look, that's why we don't change the times in Queensland, eh, Buck?
Well, there's Sunday.
Bloody times.
Sunday the 8th, Wanderer live feed. He's now changed it to the 15th.
Killing us.
Which is the following Sunday. So that's all right. So Sunday the 15th is the Wanderer. Disregard that now. I didn't realise Rob had changed his date. So anyway, good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us again, fellas. And good chat tonight. Hopefully everyone got a bit out of it. I know I did. And my next oil change, I'm going to go to 10W40. So we'll see how that goes. Hope you got something out of tonight, guys. It's bloody good having a chat with you. And Zone RV on YouTube, Tofty, we can follow your adventures. And if you haven't seen Tofty's Cape York adventures with Zone RV, very, very, very good series, mate. And not just saying that. Must be good to have your own cameraman to fly the drone and run the camera and all that. But it was really good. And for you American guys there, if you want to see a bit of Cape York, get onto the Zone RV thing. Tofty and some people tow their Zone RV caravans up to Cape York, which is the tip of Australia. And some of the footage, mate, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Really, really good. So, Brad, enjoy your adventure.
Sorry, Buck. I just say I want to try and get down to that camp with mates. I can't guarantee where I'll be in the country, but I think it's an important event. It'll be a good event. So well done to the guys who've done it. But,
no, it'd be good, Brad. It's going to be a beauty, mate.
Booking.
I'm excited about Friday night with the wood-fired pizzas on the Friday night. How good's that going to be? So, catch up with Ty Fenwick's going to go to that one, and we'll get over to your side of Nelson's Bay, Ty, and have a look at Tea Gardens and that side of Nelson's Bay. It's going to be really, really good. Really looking forward to going down and checking out the Newcastle and Hunter Valley area again. It's going to be fantastic. Righto, good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Rob the Wanderer isn't on tomorrow night. And, the 15th he's on now. Catch us later, eh? And
good night, everyone.
Look after each other and be good. We'll catch you again soon, eh? 15th is the next big one. Pete and Cam. No, the 16th. I'm going. Don't know my dates.